Greetings! I just got finished with a virtual initial consultation, which is something I usually don't do, but with COVID, plus when people are out of town, I do them. Anyway, I just wanted to walk you through what we discussed, because I take notes that only I can read, and this is why I typed them up afterward, because literally no one else can read my handwriting. All right, so the dining room, we started in the dining room. So my clients already had a table and some chairs, but this is a new house for them, and they needed some other things to spruce it up. So in addition to the table and chairs, I had her measure the size of the table, and we figured out what size rug would fit in the room. We figured out it would be 9 by 12. And then they have this one big blank wall in the back, and there's enough room back there that they can put a nice long credenza. So this is a client who, they're a military family and they move a lot, so they don't want to spend a ton of money. So I recommend, as I do to a lot of clients, look for vintage pieces. Look for stuff on Facebook Marketplace. If you have estate sales in town, go to estate sales, go to consignment stores, find something with some cool lines and completely ignore whatever else is going on in the piece, the color, whatever. Because what you can do is have it sprayed a color or do it yourself too, which saves a ton of money. These people are pretty handy, so the husband's probably going to go ahead and spray it himself. So if you find a really cool piece, you can spray it a really neat color. In this case, yes, it's blue, because my clients happen to like blue. I swear I do more than blue. But this really beautiful smoky azurite, which is a Sherwin-Williams color, is a beautiful color for furniture. It's not shockingly bright, so it's almost like a light neutral. Very nice tone. So we're going to do that in there. And then they needed a neutral for their walls, because right now they moved in the house and the walls are all buttery yellow, which some people love, but with my clients' decor, most of their stuff is white and black, and buttery yellow just does not go. So I recommended with their red wood floors that because their floors are that, not literally red, but the red toned stain, that they go with a taupe. Because what the taupe's going to do, since it has pink undertones, is actually tone down the red in the floor, which I know is kind of the opposite of what people think. But actually adding more red to that, instead of trying to go the opposite with that yellow, is actually going to tone down the red. The yellow is making the red's floor worse. So anyway, we got our smoky taupe color, and this is the color that's going to be throughout the whole downstairs. This is a really, really nice neutral if you have cherry wood floors. Keep that in mind. It's a Benjamin Moore color. So then we looked at her existing chandelier, and it's a really nice piece, but it's got a lot of bling going on. It came with the house. It's got like 4 layers of crystal, which I love bling, but not everybody does. Luckily though, if you have a chandelier that has a lot of crystals hanging on it, you can take them off. Really, you can take them off and then kind of analyze from there, evaluate, okay, do I like the piece now? You'd be surprised. Same with those little bulb shades, the little like lamp shades that come on chandeliers. You can pop those right off. And that can sometimes change the entire style of the chandelier so that you actually will like it. And another thing you can do, if you've got a chandelier that came with a place that you don't really love and you probably are going to pitch it anyway, why not try and spray it a different color? You can unhook it from the ceiling. Please don't spray it while it's still attached to the ceiling. It'll get everywhere. Take it outside, get some Rust-Oleum spray paint. Make sure you've cleaned the thing first so that you're not spray painting over spider webs and dust and whatnot. And just spray it a different color. Any color. I don't care. In this case, it would look pretty black, so we decided, to go with a black. But really, you could spray it bright pink. I mean, why not? If you don't think you're going to keep it anyway, why not try? Try and spray it and see if you like it better that way. And, then if it's got a ton of crystals on, maybe you only put like 1 row of the crystals back on. Or maybe you only put 1 at the bottom on. But that way, at least, you're saving a ton of money in a house that they're not going to be at that long because they're military again. So, but they still have a brand new looking chandelier without spending a lot of money. I mean, a can of spray paint's like $9. So there you go. Plus the time to do it. But it's really, spraying things does not take that long. It's one of my favorite things to do. So that's what we talked about in the dining room. And then we talked about their rug too. Like I said, they needed 12 by 9. So we talked about different materials. The client had a really bad experience with a new wool rug that she had purchased online, and new wool rugs do shed, especially if they're the cheaper wool rugs, particularly if they're made in China. They shed, and they don't stop shedding. So instead of doing the cheaper wool rugs, I'd rather have my clients invest less money and just get a polypropylene or polyester rug with a small pile. You got to read the description online. This is all stuff I'm telling my clients, by the way, as we're going through this. But you've got to read this description online that tells you the pile height. If it says 0, that's actually a flat rug. It doesn't have any pile to it whatsoever. It's like a mat. Those are really popular right now, and you have to be very careful when you order things that you don't order a flat rug if you don't want to. So look for like a low pile, because that will be easier to keep clean. Polyester, polypropylene. Avoid viscose at all costs. Viscose stains. Water stains viscose. Everything stains viscose. It looks shiny for about a week, and then it is disgusting after that. So they know they want polyester or polypropylene, 12 by 9 size, and then we just look for some examples real quick online. I looked at Surya, which is one of my go-to rug sources, and they had some pretty blue and white ones that were kind of like more that antique-y look without being super distressed. Some of those, it's a little much. But this one was just mostly blue with a little bit of white on it, and kind of like a nice pattern that was kind of halfway between the traditional structure, that like the traditional architecture of the house, and then the modern style of more some of their furniture. So it was kind of like a nice midway point that kind of brought the room together. So that's all we talked about in there. And then, no, it's not. We also talked about window treatments in there. So right now they have like really flimsy curtains that they're pulling back and forth that were see-through. So we looked online and tried to find some that were a little more their style. So I recommended a faux linen, because faux linen is thicker, but if it's not lined, it's not super duper thick, but it's also not sheer. It's just like a nice light blocking without completely blocking the light. Light reducing, I should say. And the faux linen material itself got some texture to it, and it's not nearly as formal as, say, like a faux silk would be. So it gives you that kind of nice texture without bringing the formality of the room up too high. And then we went to the family room. So the family room, we talked about rug size for the family room as well. So they have a huge family room. And it has like 2 big sofas in it that they already had. They're keeping that. But they needed a rug to fit. So we talked about different styles that would work. And I recommended geometric style for that would have the same colors in it as the rug in the adjacent dining room. So we're going to go a little more contemporary, since it's a little more of a casual feel to the room. And then we talked about the proper size for end tables, because her husband's actually really handy and he builds things. So he's going to build them end tables. So the arms on her sofa are 24 inches high. So if you want a contemporary look, the proper height for a 24-inch sofa would be 24 inches or up to 2 inches down. Sometimes people like to have their end tables a little bit higher, but I generally see that in more traditional designs, so I recommended keeping it at that 24-inch level or down to 22. And then her sofas themselves are 78 inches long, so you want to go about a quarter of that, if not, around that for the width of the end table, so around 18 inches or so. And then the depth, it can be as deep as the sofa itself if you want it really nice deep end table. We talked about some solutions for what to do with your cords when you don't have floor outlets. And one of those is you can actually cut a little slit in your rug. Don't cut a giant hole and remove a piece of the rug. That's not necessary. But if you take a sharp X-Acto and you cut a little slit, you can stick your cord right in there and run it underneath the carpet, underneath the sofa, to the wall outlet on the other side. It is a thing. You can absolutely do that. It's not going to ruin your rug. If it's a really, really high-end rug, maybe think twice before doing that, or have it done by a professional. Professional rug repairers can actually cut a slit appropriately for you. Don't try and DIY that. But when you're talking about a polyester rug that's $400 for a giant rug, please feel free, cut a little slit in underneath the end table, put your cord underneath there and you'll be done. So we talked about that. We talked about the appropriate height for lamps. So the table is only 24 inches high. And this is like kind of a transitional room. It's not super duper contemporary. So we don't want anything really oversized. And a lot of the lamps right now that you see online are like 32 inches, 34 inches high. That is way too big for a 24-inch table with sofas that have kind of a lower back. That's going to look enormous in that room. It's going to be way off size. Plus, my clients are pretty petite people, so they don't want anything huge. So instead of going really, really big, 26 to 28 inches is your sweet spot for a lamp on a table that's about 24 inches high. And if you've got an 18-inch wide table, you don't want the base to take up that entire table, so you want to kind of try and stay with something that's 9 inches or less, about half the width-ish of the table. And that's for the actual base, not the shade. The shade on a 9-inch table is pretty much going to be the correct dimension regardless. We also talked about side chairs because they have these really two nice white leather sofas, but they don't have any chairs. So my client prefers a symmetrical look, and actually, believe it or not, so do I. When you're talking about flanking two sofas with two chairs right next to each other too, I prefer that they match as well. So we talked about how her current sofa has track arms, which are straight arms that go down. So the chairs that she should get shouldn't be too rounded, and it shouldn't be too fussy. No tufting, which is like the buttons that, the puffy buttons and stuff. Nothing too crazy, but then again, nothing too contemporary. So we looked at a couple sites, and we actually found something within her price range on one of the retail sites, which sometimes happens and sometimes doesn't, but I like to look there and see if I can at least find you guys inspiration while we're together in a consultation. I'll bring my laptop and look through it. If I don't have my laptop for some reason, I'll look on the phone, but I do find the laptop is better because it's a bigger screen, obviously, and I just hook it up to my phone to get Wi-Fi, so it's easy to do. So we did end up finding some chairs for her and finding a material because she has all that white in the room with the white leather sofas and the room gets a lot of light. I recommended going darker with the chairs, so we're going to do a navy, but it's a herringbone, so it's got a little bit of texture to it instead of just like a flat navy, and that's a nice contrast too because the leather on the sofas is so flat, and smooth, and then you've got like this little bit of texture in the herringbone, so it's kind of a nice contrast there. So we talked about that and how it's good to have contrast in the room. Her husband made a coffee table, but they weren't happy with the stain around part of the trim, so I recommended a different stain color for them. And we chatted about actual light types, like colors of light. So I recommend light bulbs that are around 3000 K if you want to go something that's not too white and not too yellow. It's kind of like a little under daylight measurement. I forget what K stands for. Kelvin or something? I don't know. Anyway, and then at least 60 watt bulbs in your lamp. So if you get a table lamp that says, max 40 watt bulb, that's not going to be a lot of light. Even with an LED version of that's just not going to be a lot of light. If you're actually going to be sitting there and reading at night or knitting at night, you need light, especially as we get older. I mean, we don't have 18-year-old eyes, most of us anymore. So we need a little bit more power on our light so that we don't get a headache and, get cranky. And then we talked about valances, and I looked through some of my books that are behind me real quick to try and find some colors for new valances. My client is able to sew, so she's going to sew them herself. So I actually found this really pretty valance fabric potential that has the same blue, very similar blue to the piece that we're going to have repainted for the dining room. And then the background, the neutral color, this is really important. You need to make sure your neutral in whatever fabric you have goes with your neutral wall color or any other neutrals in the room. And they coordinate really well. I don't know if you can tell on there, the video is kind of weird, but they do coordinate really well. So I'm going to send her a sample of this and see if she likes it. And if she is, we can just get some yardage. It's not going to be much. Balances do not take much yardage whatsoever. But this fabric also has that dark blue that is in the chairs for that room. So kind of a nice contrast there. And then we just talked a little bit about the kitchen. They have a chandelier right now, but it's not necessarily under where they want the table to be because they have those French doors that swing in that many of us Hudsonites know and love. She actually doesn't live in the state, but same idea. You've got this little tiny area for a table, and then you have these doors that swing in. And since they're only going to be there a couple years, and replacing doors is actually really expensive, they don't want to have to replace the door. So I recommended just getting rid of the chandelier, putting a flush mount light up there, moving the table where they want it to be, and just calling it a day. If they were going to be there for a long time, I would absolutely recommend switching it out for a slider. I know sliders are a little antiquated to a lot of people, but they're actually a lot more functional in a kitchen than those huge swinging doors that go in that prohibit you from having like a normal sized table in your kitchen area. They also have these funky poles on their cabinets that are like twisted and ropey looking, and an otherwise really beautiful shaker style kitchen. So I was like, yeah, you got to get rid of those stat and just get some that are, square and normal looking. That was about it. That took us the whole time because we were looking for some furniture and stuff. I was giving her some examples on the fly. So what I do next is I type up all my notes since, as I mentioned, I'm the only one who can read them. I type them all up and I send them to them in an email. And I also will send large-scale samples of all the paint colors that we chose. And I will also send them a sample of the fabric that we discussed in the meeting. And that's what you get during a consultation. I hope that was helpful. I plan to do some more of these as I go on them just to give you ideas of what we cover because every single consultation is completely different. But if you have any questions about, what you need to do in your house and what you would like to cover in a consultation and if we can cover that much or anything like that, just let me know. Book a discovery call with me. You can through my website, eclecticinteriors.biz, or, reach out to me via email. All right. Thanks, guys. Bye.